Lord. Hi, Mike. Thanks for helping my project. Could you say a little bit about yourself?
A little bit about myself. Okay, I'm a propeller-headed nerd. I live in the Minneapolis area. I have a lot of, I am an avid space fan. So I was literally born 3 months after Sputnik launched. And my childhood between 1957 and 1970 or so is the Toy Story transition from cowboys to space as our heroes, as our cultural heroes. And so I distinctly remember watching Roy Rogers, Stony Burke, on and on with the wagon train, the riflemen, whatever, Pow Pow were the heroes of 1963 or thereabouts. And then 4 years later, it was James T. Kirk, and Space Ghost was the big cartoon show on Saturday morning. And 2001: A Space Odyssey, I remember seeing that in the theater in 1968. Billy Mooney, Lost in Space. So that whole transition from Woody to Buzz was my childhood. And I remember, early memories, 1962, the Cuban Missile Crisis. And that we lived in Atlanta, and that was the flyover between, like the midpoint between Washington, D.C. and Havana. And so we had literally a bomb shelter in our basement, some canned foods in the basement and what have you, because we had these new things called missiles that were going to be the next form of warfare. I remember another early memory is we made a family visit to my grandmother's house in Michigan, and I saw snow for the first time because, I was a child. I lived in Atlanta, hardly snows there, right? And I'm looking out grandma's window as a maybe a 4 or 5 year old, and seeing snowflakes come down. And I said, "Look, Grandma, rockets," because we were hearing so much about the Mercury launch, Shepard and Glenn and what have you. I remember the Agena Gemini mission, which was a really cool one where they docked with a target vessel, the Agena target vessel, and they did a spacewalk. And coincidentally, it was Neil Armstrong that was, I think, the flight commander on that mission. So I remember, Walter Cronkite, spoon feeding us all kinds of scientific and engineering information, as a 8, 9-year-old. I was 12, and distinctly remember, or no, I was 11 and a half. And I distinctly remember watching the Giant Leap for Mankind. After that, Apollo 12 was a bit of a disappointment because they accidentally aimed their video camera, at the sun and burned it out. And so we didn't get the coverage, the video from the moon. I remember that. I remember Apollo 13, the 3-4 days, whatever it was, of drama, what have you, of the successful failure mission. Apollo 15, I think, was the first lunar buggy, driving that golf cart thing around on the surface of the moon. So basically, my youth very much, was following the developments of the U.S. space program, just from its nascence to its summit with the lunar landings and what have you. In any case, I'm a total propeller-headed space nerd. I could go on and on and on and on. I've seen 3 launches, including one just 2 weeks ago. I was down in Florida and saw a SpaceX launch there, my second SpaceX launch. I also saw a shuttle launch in the late 90s. And so I'm an avid follower.
The first time I went to Kennedy Space Center was December 1995. No, 1985. And Challenger was on the launch pad.
Oh.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. I'm
So
sorry, what month was it?
it was December because they didn't launch
Yeah.
into January,
Right,
but
January 28th or something like that, right? So
something like
yeah.
that. Yeah, it's like the fourth attempt that they try to launch. Like there was like three previous attempts to launch, and each
Yeah.
time something went wrong. And
Yes.
and each of those three times are much warmer days, so it probably would not have run into that problem
Uh-huh.
on those
Yeah,
three.
what pilots, general aviation pilots refer to it as a disease where you're in a hurry to get home, and so therefore you fly under less than perfect conditions. Whether you're the pilot's in poor health, there's something mechanically wrong, you're flying into poor weather conditions, whatever, but you're in such a hurry to achieve the mission that you don't exercise due caution, and so oh, that's horrible. Yep.
Yeah, and Martin Glycol was the company that had made the solid rocket boosters, and
Yep.
they had studied like the burn through, and I think the way that they got that data was by recovering the rocket boosters, which they had intended to reuse for post-flight analysis. And
Yep.
I was just like thinking how important reusability is, or at least recoverability is from a safety perspective. Just to analyze
That's a good point. That's a good point. Yeah, because Jeff Bezos funded the opportunity to actually recover one of the big main engines, Apollo main engines, from the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean. And the things that you could learn even decades later from one of those, the F1, was that from one of those F1 rockets, even though you've just pulled it up from the bottom of the ocean, it's got a barnacle or two on it, I suppose, but still the things you could learn about, because it was hydrogen fueled, wasn't it?
hydrogen and oxygen. Yeah. Was it? I know. I think it was kerosene.
Okay, it was the space shuttle that was H2O.
The space shuttle was, let's see, Apollo fuel. The great thing about this internet thing is that
Oh yeah, we're all experts. Yeah.
well, yeah.
Yeah. You see what I have going over my shoulder here?
Oh, is that?
This is the top of Mauna Kea, and there's the Subaru and other telescopes at the top of this mountain, or a volcano in Hawaii, and
Okay. And that's like the laser that they're using to
those are the guide stars that they use so that they can watch the laser quiver, and they could use that to subtract out the shimmering of the atmosphere and what have you. But this is a live feed from the top of Mauna Kea. Today's not a particularly good one because it's full moon conditions. But so Minnesota late morning is like 4 a.m., 3 a.m., whatever it is in Hawaii. And when there's no moon, it is absolutely gorgeous. You can see the Milky Way galaxy, rising into view, and just below that comes the Andromeda galaxy. And occasionally, very rarely, you get to see these aiming lasers and what have you. But it's very peaceful background just to have playing. It doesn't change very fast, but it does change. Anyway.
So on the video feed, can you see a lot of stars whenever it's night?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. When it's not full moon, it is absolutely, black on white, shimmering, and you're now down at the there's a certain amount of noise in the camera. They got the ISO or whatever turned all the way up and what have you. And so you can see real twinkling of stars, and but then you also see some noise from camera noise and what have you. During meteor showers, you can sit here and you just, every 30 seconds or so, you see a meteor flashing by. It's a fun background.
It's pretty amazing. But I wanted to kind of go back to your childhood in the 60s. I guess how much was space a topic of everyday conversation?
You know, that's a difficult question. Yeah, I mean, to say to what extent was that? I mean, it
Well,
was
I
just
mean, it's almost,
it was absolutely present. You know, it was you know, you could smell it, taste it, feel it. And I don't know if you know, because I'm just inclined that way or was drawn into it, that it has more emphasis to me than it may have to my brothers and sisters. We had a neighbor in Kansas City who worked for, I think, Emerson Electric, I'm not sure. But in 1965, he relocated to Cocoa Beach and was part of the Apollo program. And I remember on a family vacation going down there and visiting. So, and that, you know, it's not every, you know, family living in Kansas City. My father worked in manufacturing for Chevrolet, and so he relocated every 4th or 5th year. So we moved around a fair amount. It was like being an Army brat. But in any case, the you know, so it was absolutely a regular, you know, not quite as much as now where we have the internet showing us, you know, the Artemis rollout live and the, you know, on and on and on. The amount of exposure that you can have today, you know, it was more, what's the word, juried, or, you know, the broadcast networks chose what to show you. And, you know, Life magazine and other media outlets gave it to you in careful doses and what have you. Whereas now, you know, hey, if you're into watchmaking, then there's a watchmaking channel. There's a, you know, there's a specialty for absolutely everything, and you can just overwhelm yourself. So so I think, you know, comparing then to now, yes, it was a significant presence, and you could find a lot of information to wallow in if you elected to, but it was way more difficult than it is today because, you know, there were a few broadcast channels, a few magazines, occasional newspaper article sort of thing. But anyway.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting point, is that everybody was sort of on the same page, but nobody could go deeper than that page back in the 1960s, just because of the nature of media. So everybody knew we landed on the moon, but nobody could watch the second landing because it wasn't covered.
Yes. Yeah. And yeah, agreed.
But I mean, like you and your friends, did y'all play like cowboy and Indians or like space explorers? I mean, like, what was the vibe like there?
I remember distinctly a good friend named John, and he and I were drawn the same way into the whole science fiction, fantasy, whatever. And so, you know, when we had the, you know, we didn't live in the same neighborhood, so there were like play dates where, you know, he would come to my house or I would go to his, and I distinctly remember us setting up, you know, chairs and blankets and whatever, and it was a spaceship, what have you. So yes, absolutely, it was there.
And now 1969, Neil and Buzz are landing on the moon. How old were you?
11 and a half.
11 and a half. And what did you think of it? I mean, like,
oh, we were awestruck. I mean, everybody was. I mean, there are a billion people all around the world. I mean, you know, it's like, you know, modern day New Year's Eve, where they would show, you know, a live shot from Paris, a live shot from New York City, a live shot of people, you know, just in absolute awe, staring at screens and watching parties and what have you. I don't remember the time of day that it occurred. I mean, there was I mean, there was the landing, and I remember watching that, and then there was a rest period, and then they opened the door and walked out. And I remember it taking a long time. Everything is done so cautiously. The amount of time that it took from suiting up to opening the hatch to down the ladder to stepping onto the moon's surface was hours, what have you. So I remember it being, come on, wanting the instant gratification that we all crave. But anyway,
that is
yeah.
I mean, plus it must have been really frustrating that they landed and then were told to take a nap before stepping out. And that must have been frustrating.
Yes.
It's smart, but
it's like, I took a business trip to Paris once, and you fly across the pond and what have you, and you land and you're in Paris and what have you, and your clock is all screwed up, and so in your mind, okay, it's now time to do some catch-up sleep before I go out and roam the Rive Gauche and see Notre Dame and what have you. And it's like you lay there in bed dead tired, knowing that you don't want to be in bed. So it has to be in some way it's difficult to compare the Sea of Tranquility and Paris to each other in any other way than that, I suppose, right?
Yeah, or flying into Disneyland or Orlando, and it's the day before you're going to the park.
Yes.
As a kid, you're like,
yeah.
Why can't I go now? We're here.
You got it. I'm ready to go. I got my Mickey ears on. Let's go.
So 1972, Apollo 17, last time to go to the moon.
I remember they left a camera running on the ground to watch the ascent. And I distinctly remember that. It was, the way it even tried to track it upward and what have you. So I do recall that quite well. Yeah.
But how did it? I mean, did it strike you that would be the last time we would go to the moon?
The coverage had diminished so much from Apollo 11 to Apollo 17 that Apollo, even 8, the around the moon at Christmas Eve and the reading of the I remember, you just got every bit, a checkpoint, every handful of hours in the early missions, and it became so ho-hum, or the coverage just diminished so much between Apollo 11 and Apollo 17, and all the excitement was gone. It was no longer seen as quite so heroic or something, and therefore it just kind of petered out. But yeah, and then I immediately after that we had the Skylab missions, which I don't recall a whole lot of coverage of, and then it just kind of went into the whole lull during the when the emphasis was on the development of the space shuttle, and so development is hard. I'm following what SpaceX is doing in Boca Chica, and they're making remarkably fast progress, and yet if you watch it day-to-day basis, it's like watching paint dry. There's a lot of people busy and doing a lot of work, but it's not the instant gratification of routine launches and what have you. Anyway.
It's probably like watching a building being built. It's like, oh, they broke ground, and then wow, there's the frame, and then there's lots of periods where it's like I don't see anything different.
Yes. Yeah. And yeah. By the way, as an aside, we are actually communicating with each other right now through Starlink.
Are we?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, I enrolled in the Starlink beta a year and 2 months ago. And so I have a Dishy McDishface up on the roof here. And I have two ways of connecting. I'm sorry. If somebody out there isn't getting their Dishy McDishface, I have one, even though I still have cable TV, what have you. So yes, I have two, and Dishy is actually more reliable now than Comcast cable than the internet service through cable TV. So I have it set so that's the preferred connection.
Yeah, I mean, your connection looks great. And it's so amazing. I mean, Starlink, I think, is going to be transformational. Just look at, I guess, Ukraine as an example.
Yes. Yes. And it will evolve, because the current generation Starlink is, I connect to a, whatever satellite happens to be overhead, and then it connects to a ground station, and there's one about 250 miles northwest of here, and there's another one about 350 miles. It's closer to Chicago than it is to Minneapolis. So my signal goes just up, down, and then once it's down, then it's in the fiber network and going around the world. But the second shell that they just literally launched, that I watched launch number 9 2 weeks ago down in Florida. And this morning they did launch number 11. So they've got a weekly cadence of, approximately 50 satellites a week going up for the next shell. And that next shell is going to have laser interconnections between, so that I would connect to a satellite, to another satellite, to another satellite, to another satellite, to Paris, what have you. And greater bandwidth and lower latency, because the speed of light is faster in a vacuum, much faster than it is in a fiber optic fiber. So it'll actually be a better than we've ever had connection when the phase 2 shell is in operation. But anyway.
I wonder if it's, so, there was a fiber optic cable built between Chicago and New York that was highly optimized to allow for these commodity and stock traders to get the information before everybody else could.
Yes.
I wonder if Starlink changes that for them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. You cut a handful of milliseconds off, and the high velocity trading is based on, okay, we know something about transaction demand in location X, but it's not executed until it gets to location Y. So if we know that there's a bump in demand coming through a slower pipe, and we can, it's all rigged. It's all rigged against us. We can't possibly win, it's anyway.
Yeah, it's, well, at least not at that level. You have people, kind of making money off of the itsy bitsy fluctuations, and you have the big ocean and Taisumis.
Yes. Yeah.
That you kind of have to wait out for. But so why do you think we've never been to the moon since 1972?
Will and purpose. And maybe those two go hand in hand. I mean, we just, we had a collective will in the 60s, in the height of the Cold War, beat the Russians. We're so competitive, Have you got your NCAA tournament brackets? I threw some darts, and I'm following that. Just why? I could care less about college basketball, but once a year I pay attention to it. Well, likewise, in terms of the space race, which it definitely was a race and a national obsession and commitment and whatever, we did that, by virtue of will. But once we got there, there's no there, right? You could see that how much more effort it was going to take to set up a lunar base. What we knew about lunar resources. Where are we going to get oxygen from? Are we going to ship all our oxygen up there? Water, basic, solar power generation, what have you. We knew so much less then, and there was so much more infrastructure capability that was going to be necessary, that once we got, I'm reminded as a child, they, built treehouse. And then as soon as you build the platform and whatever for your treehouse and you go sit up there and you say, well, this is boring, because there's nothing to do up here in the middle of a tree.
I feel that way whenever going to a swimming pool. It's like, okay, now I'm all wet.
And you live in Texas. I mean, it's like, just to wash the heat off is, yeah, anyway. So, there has to be a return. There has to be something beneficial that keeps us going back for more. And so we need a collective will, and we need a return, a benefit. And that's, so once we had a, been there, done that, got the t-shirt sort of mentality, we focused on low Earth orbit, right? And the space station and telecommunication satellites and weather observing, the Hubble Space Telescope, what have you. Those things in low Earth and geosynchronous orbit that could pay us short-term real, benefits right now. We had better weather prediction, better communication. We had, a view back in time through space telescopes. We had spy satellites, so we had a sense of security coming from that. Those were tangible benefits. What does the moon offer? What does it have for us? And so I think that needs to be an important part of the puzzle going forward, because without that, without saying, oh no, just imagine a radio telescope on the moon. Imagine what we can do with gravitational wave observatories, the scientific advances. Or no, the moon is a relatively nearby research station that allows us a fractional gravity place to see. Elon Musk is all keen on taking us to Mars, right? And because that's going to be the lifeboat for Earth. We're going to, it's like your appendix in your intestines serves as a little reserve of the biota, the things that you need that live inside of your intestines. Well, they're stored in the appendix and what have you. And so that if you get sick and all of them die, then it's just, oh, I've got a reserve over here. I think that's kind of Elon Musk's attitude about Mars is, let's put a reserve for human life and intelligence, what have you, on Mars. Well, do we even know that a plant can germinate and mature and grow a fruitful crop in fractional gravity?
We do. They can actually. We know
that a plant can. There's a difference between a plant and a crop.
Well, that's true too. That's true too.
Right.
We do. Yeah, we need to grow some pea plants and free fall. Then that'll help.
We need to. Then taking that a step further, do we know that a human being can gestate, grow through infancy, learn to walk, and what have you, in fractional gravity? Do we know?
I mean, one other option is they could spend a really long time in the centrifuge.
Right. And well, I believe that the crawl, walk, run in terms of colonizing Mars, I think that a step of it will, a big wheel in the sky space station is going to be an important part of that, because that in low Earth orbit. So having a big, where you can have this outer ring is at Earth gravity, and then this ring is at Mars gravity, 0.38, and then this ring is at lunar gravity, and you spin the whole thing at 1 RPM, and you achieve that. But then you could do significant scale engineering work on and biological research and whatever to see what are the long-term effects of fractional gravity, and do it from a place that's only 250 miles up. Easy to get back and forth. So I personally think that we're going to need that sort of development station, R&D station in low Earth orbit in order to develop the mining equipment and the agriculture and the all water reclamation and recovery, environmental systems. Everything is going to need to be we need, in order to be effective inventors, we need iterative loops. We need the ability to fail fast, try again, whatever, as cheaply as possible. And so trying to invent the perfect in situ resource reclamation system for Mars, all on a whiteboard, ship it off to Mars and turn it on and see, does it work? I don't think that's going to cut it. I think that we're going to need, a low Earth orbiting station, a lunar station, which is more expensive to get to, but, closer to, we're going to need to research, develop, and deploy in that sort of mode long term.
Absolutely. And even here on Earth, we should have self-sustained colonies on the ground. Why not create communities of people that are able to be water and food and energy self-sufficient?
And I suppose that the Antarctic Research Station is something of a, you think of the bubble community in Arizona that was 20 biosphere, but actually the Antarctic Research Station is in some senses that it's a few hundred people locked into you don't dare go outside without taking extreme precautions. That it actually teaches us a lot about the human condition and psyche and what have you. Anyway,
definitely. So we're planning to go back to the moon. We had the big rollout of Artemis 1 this week, which is the first test flight.
Yes.
So we're beyond PowerPoints, actually getting rockets to launch pads. How are you feeling about it?
A friend of mine lives in Tampa, and another friend lives literally on Cocoa Beach. And so we were the ones that got together 2 weeks ago to see the launch and the SpaceX launch. So my friend in Tampa, his name is Rick. Rick reached out to me this week and says, "All right, are you going to come down for the Artemis launch?" And my first inclination is actually no. And just for a personal practical reason, it's not that I'm not excited or think it's cool. I mean, to see that strong, powerful blast off, it's like 12 SpaceX Falcon 9s, all packed into one beast, right? That would be awesome to see. But the problem to me is that the first one, first of all, it's a coin toss on whether or not you're going to have ideal weather the day that you're there or the few days that you're there. Florida is prone to interesting weather. The next thing is every system, every ground support equipment, the booster, everything has to be in perfect shape, ready to go, what have you, or they say abort, 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 and scrub the mission and then come back and try it again in a week or what have you. So my buddy in Tampa has, already teased and said, you coming down this summer for the launch? And my first inclination was, yeah, probably not, just because I can't, to those guys who live in Florida, for whom it's either a 2-hour drive, or for the other guy, it's literally just, step out onto his veranda and he can see the range. For them, it's a no-brainer. For me from Minnesota, a little more challenging. I'll probably be following it here on the flat screen.
Maybe instead of going down there to see the launch, you should just go down there to visit your friend around that time, and then the launch turns out to be a bonus or not.
Yes.
Maybe.
Yep.
Strategy. So we were planning to put people on the moon 2024. That's been delayed to 2025. The Chinese have been talking about putting people on the moon in 2035, and recently they said they think they could do it by 2027.
Yes.
What do you think about the Chinese getting back to the moon before we do?
Okay, let's go over to another Elon project, Tesla. And so they have the original plant in Fremont, California. And then they said, no, we need to build a plant somewhere else for manufacturing. That's really, then the plant in Fremont is not optimized. It was, a 1960s era auto factory, and today you would engineer it much differently. So they from a clean sheet of paper, and they built a plant in Shanghai, China, 1 year from groundbreaking to vehicles out the door, 365 days, bing, bang, bonk, done. It's in operation. Wow. Then they went and they built 2 more factories, one in Austin, Texas, and one in Berlin, near Berlin, Germany, and what have you. And both of those are taking substantially longer than 1 year, even though, they've already done it once in Shanghai. So the second and third one should go even faster, right? Well, the amount of regulatory oversight and permissions, what have you, add significantly to the process. So we allow our sense of caution, we as a society allow our sense of caution to slow our progress. And so, and here we have an absolute clear-cut case of, look at China versus Austin, Texas, which is relatively low regulation compared to building in, here in Minnesota or whatever, it's, more highly regulated than Texas, which is more kind of, pew-pew, versus Berlin, what have you. And so I think we have an opportunity to learn that, if the goal is to get it done fast, we can relax some of our oversight and achieve objectives faster, if that's the will. Okay. Now, I'm not going to say that you don't also lose something, in terms of respect for the environment, worker safety, impact on water resources, whatever it may be. So you can't just say, okay, I'm going to turn off regulation because then the things that you're afraid of are going to come to pass. So we need to find the right balance between those. Is speed the most important thing? Time is money. Yes, that's very important, but also safety, environmental impacts, making sure that unintended consequences don't come out and bite us at a future date. That's also important. So I don't know. I know that there's a way to get things done faster, but let's be careful of what we're losing by diminishing regulation. So basically, I'm coming down squarely in the middle. I don't have a strong feeling, but I get it. I understand that there's a yin and a yang here.
Do you think that the people will find that motivating? Like, let's make the moon thing happen since China's doing it? Or do you think people will be like, we already been there first. What does it matter?
It's a big moon. People in Conestoga wagons didn't say, somebody's made it to California, so I'm not going to Oregon. If we can come up with the compelling set of benefits that having a lunar station provides, then it doesn't matter if China has their station over here and Canada has theirs and whatever. I mean, there's I personally think that there's benefit in doing things collectively. The International Space Station is an international space station, and that there's some politics around that lately with knuckleheads on Twitter that should shut the heck up, barking at each other through tweets. But there would probably be some good benefit to us putting our heads together and saying, wow, together we can do this better than we can individually. But then on the other hand, hey, they have a Fregistram. We need a Fregistram. We can build a better Fregistram. And there is also benefit in saying no, having 2 or 3 different competing approaches, and may the best approach win. Gives you greater security, greater insurance, greater although diminished efficiency. So anyway,
well, I mean, it's just like your college basketball contest. Nobody really paying attention until like this
yes,
March Madness.
Yes.
I mean, if you could imagine having like the Chinese with the set of kind of things they've achieved and the things the Americans achieve, and it's like, who's going to do this next? Who's going to do the next achievement? Might actually inject some sport into this activity.
Yes. Yeah, I do business consulting, and I have this funny saying that successful executives are emotional 3-year-olds stuffed into 48-year-old bodies. I may now win, fight, compete.
Why can't I?
Why can't I? Yes, yeah, exactly. And so a sense of urgency is a wonderful thing, because it helps you to sort out, the big rocks from the nuisance sand and gravel, and to work on the things that matter.
Yeah, and it's like you have 2 kids surrounded by toys, right? And one kid would pick up a toy. Suddenly, that's the toy. It's like we don't know what's valuable in space, but suddenly you have somebody else doing something. You're like, we want that. They're doing it.
Yep.
When you look at the future, 100 years, 200 years, 300 years from now, what do you see?
I'm currently reading Dune for funny reasons. I actually have 2 copies of it's a great science fiction novel from the 1960s. And it's the story of Paul Atreides, you may have seen the movie, who has been kind of like genetically engineered through what have you. And he has capabilities. He has this ability to see the future and what have you. And it's interesting how it's described. By the way, the reason I'm reading the book Dune is because I'm learning Spanish.
Oh,
And so I have 2 copies. It's an 800-page book in English and 1,100 in Spanish. It takes more words to say the same thing in Spanish than it does in English. In any case, I'm reading them side by side and what have you, in order to get my Spanish skills from this to this, right? In any case, Paul has this ability to see the future. And the way that it is described in the book is that it's like, you know, from here, I can see to that hill, but I can't see over that hill, but I can see a mountain far beyond the hill. And I know that if I make choices here, a different choice of words or what have you, that the vision changes and what have you. So you asking me the question, what do you see 100, 200 years out? My mind immediately goes to, oh man, that's, you know, there are so many entangled interdependencies. I share the fear that we are going to break this, that you know, whether it's we're going to nuke ourselves or we're going to you know, there's going to evolve some mega bug that is going to make COVID look like a walk in the park, or you know, I mean, do the math just on the amount of carbon that we pull out of the ground and put into the atmosphere. That it's real and it's dangerous, and we shouldn't be doing that. You know, so I do have a concern that we have this ability to accelerate our own demise, and we had better find some plan Bs to either mitigate the dangers or to give us an escape path or what have you. So I do have a sense of concern about that, you know, 100, 200, 300 years, the likelihood that we're not going to do something horrible to ourselves, you know, the great filter, we're going to filter our way out of existence. I am not optimistic that we are going to turn into a peaceful, environmentally aware, whatever, you know, you know, so that, you know, like what was it, Malthus, you know, the Malthusian, you know, you do the math and you say, oh, we're going to run out of food and energy here, and then they invent nuclear power and they invent tractors and they invent and what have you. So yeah, we do have a history of engineering our way out of problems, but I can just see it getting ahead of us. So I am not terribly optimistic about mankind's ability to keep going in the directions that we are here on Earth and not, you know, poison ourselves in some way, shape, or form. I'm less concerned about the asteroid hitting the Earth and more concerned about us shooting ourselves in the foot. So that becomes a compelling reason for us to colonize Mars, or to set up stations on the moon or whatever, just to give us more ways out. And so, but you know, that's a tough sell. That politically, you know, 100 years from now, you know, I mean, what is the likelihood that you individually are going to be alive 50 years from today?
Probably very low, actually.
Yeah. Okay. My 91-year-old father, he knows that the likelihood of him being alive in 5 years is very low. Looking out 30 or what have you, I'm 64 years old. Looking out 30 years, yeah, it's kind of probably not going to happen and what have you. Well, we as a society need to look out 100 years and say, what is the likelihood of humankind being here in 100 years? And there is a good chance that the answer is no. We're not going to be here unless we come up with some plan Bs and change our behaviors. But anyway.
Well, and I think it seems very likely that we'll have human beings here 100 years ago, 100 years from now. The question is, will they be civilized? Will they be literate? Will they be technological? Will they
Yes.
be will they be eating the rodents that they find, or you know, eating any bush, and like, what will their life be like?
Yes. Yeah. World War III. We don't know what weapons will be used for World War III, but we know that World War IV will be fought with clubs and bows and arrows. Yes.
But you know, did you watch Elon's sales pitch for Mars and his space Starship update?
Yeah, he's consistent. He, continually gives the same. Yes.
Well, I mean, this time he put a little bit more color around. It's going to be miserable. It's be cold. You know, he was talking about how physically and personally difficult being on Mars would be, and he's like, that's the sales pitch. You know.
Do you personally want to go spend a winter at McMurdo Station in the Antarctic? Does that sound?
I'm thinking I'm getting to this point in my life where I'm willing to do a lot of things just for the novelty of it. So yes, I think I would like to spend a winter.
So there are people that are going to sign themselves up to go to Mars and lead that bleak underground existence, bombarded by galactic rays, at the tenuous end of a thread of the the oxygen reclamation system functioning perfectly, growing potatoes, sciencing the S out of, quoting the movie The Martian. But there are people that, for whom that's the way to go, just as there were people that, risked getting cholera and whatever on the Oregon Trail. So we need them. But
and I was thinking, a lot of people went from Europe to North America, not because North America was so great, but because Europe is so bad.
Yes.
And I think there's a lot of people who would be like
my grandmother.
And I'm not exactly sure what motivated my ancestors to come over, but I can't imagine it was any great draw.
My grandparents came from Lithuania in the wake of the Russian Revolution of 1906. Yeah. And
I think the issues we have on Earth with fellow people might actually be a driver to say some people are like, I know it's horrible, but it's known and can be figured out, as opposed to this kind of uncontrollable situation that could develop here on Earth.
Yeah. The burning platform that drives you to change. And, just hope that somebody doesn't get in their mind that, oh, well, if we want to see change, well, maybe we should light the platform on fire.
Yes, I don't know. No.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it doesn't need encouragement. Don't need that.
Yeah. I mean, one of the policy of mutual assured destruction, the thing that keeps anybody from hitting the button is the sheer insanity of it, knowing that this is it. I'm hitting Control-Alt-Delete on life on Earth by launching. But if you say, yeah, but we've got plan B and plan C in place, so therefore
I mean, this guy buys up all the real estate on Mars for like pennies. Is like, okay, how to increase the valuation of that real estate?
Ooh, creative destruction. Yes,
that's horrible, but you can still see it too.
Yeah, well, that's what science fiction is for. Is take the plausible and extend it out into the future, and yeah.
So if it was safe and affordable, would you take a trip to space?
Yes.
How far would you go? Suborbital, orbital?
I am a poor candidate, by the way, for a variety of reasons. It's like the one guy that won the golden ticket to go on the
Inspiration 4.
Inspiration 4 and had to give it away because he was 50 pounds too heavy. And he
Yes.
knew that there was no way that he could lose 50 pounds in time and so he gave it to Chris, the golden ticket to Chris.
Yeah.
So you know, I'm blind in my left eye. I'm chunky. I'm old. I'm, you know, whatever. So I'm a poor candidate for it. Although William Shatner did the little joyride up to the common line. So, you know, who knows?
Did you watch the documentary Countdown about the Inspiration 4?
Yes,
Now,
I did.
they didn't mention that at all about the ticket being,
No.
I feel like that would have, I feel two things. One is, I feel there's a little bit of dishonesty there. And then second thing I feel is that bit of the story would have really added something as well, because I think people would have kind of related to it.
I like truth. You know, varnished, unvarnished, whatever. I mean, you know, you can't just disclose things about people's lives, personal lives, and what have you, and the choices they make. And so, you know, yes, they have to walk a fine line of what you do and don't say. And you know, some of it is they packaged it. You know, it was a marketing job, and it worked. You know,
But the way it was presented,
I went online and made my donation to Children's Hospital.
yeah, me too. I was there. I was like, when they were, you know, delaying announcing it, I was thinking, well, maybe they're just having trouble getting in touch with me. So, you know, I reached out to them, but anyway.
Me. And we have another one going up. Is it this summer?
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
Yeah.
Polaris 1.
Yes.
But in the story Countdown, in the movie, I mean, they make it sound like Chris won the ticket and, you know, he accepted it. I mean, that's the way I interpret it whenever I saw it. There's like no.
It wasn't until after the fact that we get the backstory of, no, it was a friend of Chris's that actually, you know, got the Willy Wonka bar and had to designate it off to him. But I'm just wondering what the IRS tax implications of that are. Okay, he won a multi-million dollar.
Chris is going up and come
if
back.
he'd have gone on eBay and sold that mother.
So he's going up to up and back, and now Chris's friend has to pay the taxes on $45 million. Like,
well,
Chris,
it's just
bail me out.
But wait a minute, didn't Chris get the, and so shouldn't he be declaring the 45? I mean, can you imagine being the IRS auditor? Chris.
Would you consider immigrating to Mars?
I would not be no, my wheel in the sky space station. I'd be all over that. I'd be 100%, you know, be the IT guy on deck 12 of that. I'd be all over that. Be a little bit protected by the Van Allen belt, having a life pod, an escape pod that if, you know, if I took a micrometeoroid, I could get home. So I don't think that not me. Now, if my, you know, if one of my sons were to say, Dad, you know, this is tough, but, you know, we're not going to see each other ever again. I'm going to Mars. I'd be all over, you know, I'd be very supportive of that. But I don't think I personally am a good candidate for that.
Okay, let's say your son does go to Mars and your great-great-great-granddaughter has grown up on Mars her entire life. She's now in high school.
Yes.
She's doing a paper on the 2020s, just like we might do a paper on the 1920s.
Yep.
And she comes across this video for some good nuggets to put into her paper about what the 2020s are like. what are some things you think would help her get top marks?
The dawn of the age of artificial intelligence. We are at the very initial threshold of something that is going to be so transformative. Go back to 1880, 95% of people in the United States of America were involved in growing food. They're farmers, they're subsistence, either food or distribution of food or whatever. And if you, in 1880, if you'd have said, hey, you know what, by 1950, we're only going to need 5% of the population to deal with food. And then would have said, you're absolutely crazy. And said, oh, no, there's going to be this other thing that comes along. And 95% of people are going to work in factories. And people in 1880 would have said, you're crazy, right? And there it is, 1955, and 95% of Americans are now working in General Motors and Ford and steel mills and what have you. And that is the basis of the economy. Then you go into 1955 and you say, hey, everybody, guess what? By the year 2005, only 5% of Americans are going to work in factories. And the other 95% are going to be knowledge workers. You would have said, you're absolutely crazy, okay? Or in the service economy or whatever, but you're not, you're going to be, interacting with these things, not with, right? And they would have said, you're absolutely crazy. And here we come up to 2005, and Bill Gates and Moore's Law and what have you have fundamentally changed things. So here now you are in the year 2020, 2022, and you say, hey, everybody, guess what? I know that you're all knowledge workers now or in the service economy or what have you, but you know what? In another 40 years, 50 years, it's not going to happen. It isn't going to be there. You are going to be doing something else. I don't know what that something else is, but artificial intelligence and, drones and robots and self-driving cars and that, it's going to be different. It is, because it is always going to be different. And so what, my granddaughter will be living in whatever that future is. And so I would probably be giving her a perspective on what we knew and didn't know, what we anticipated, what we didn't anticipate, what we feared, what we, with this great looming thing on the horizon of artificial intelligence. And that we either shot ourselves in the foot or we created something that is absolutely magnificent. I don't know yet, but I would probably add that color to it.
That is awesome, Mike. Well, that's pretty much all the questions I had. Is there anything that you wanted to talk about or any questions you had for me?
No, we've done a full hour. This is probably longer than most of your interviews, isn't it?
I would say that the average length is probably 30 minutes.
Yep.
But yeah, it is. Yeah.
Nobody's ever going to watch this.
Well, you're a great granddaughter, Mike.
There you go.
Yeah. Hopefully you didn't have plans this morning. Sorry about that.
I'm waiting for the family upstairs to wake up. It's 8:22 a.m. here in Minnesota, and they're still dead asleep. So anyway.
Well, Mike, thank you so much, and I hope you have a good rest of your day. And I look forward to you coming down to Houston.
I will absolutely take you up on that. Probably a year from now. All right.
Okay. Take care.
Bye, Nathan.